And hello and good Friday. Okay, so I um I don't know, a week or so ago, whenever it was, time flies, I did a video about some things that I do in Snagit, TechSmith Snagit, not just screenshots and basic screen captures, but editing and rearranging the image and things like that and how I use it. And I got a comment on that video saying, you talked about it, but you didn't show how to do what you were talking about. So it's like, oh, okay, good point. Thank you. So I figured I would just rehash the slides, but actually show how I do what I do in case that's of interest to anyone. So here it is, a Snagit tips and tricks demo showing how I do some of these tips and tricks. And some of them are, I'm just going over the features, but others I'll actually show how I use it and use these techniques. So let's jump in. So I talked about the editor, which I won't really go into that exists, or excuse me, the library. So Snagit retains all of your screen captures if you want in a library that is accessible. And you can see, the past months or even years, all of your screenshots. Now, I mentioned the Snagit shared library, and this is a feature, I believe, in version 21 or 2021, I think is when it first came out. I'm now on version 2022. So basically in the last year, this feature came out. And so let's take a look at this. So first is there's the library location option, and you'll go into editor. Come on, PowerPoint. In the Snagit editor, you'll choose Edit and Editor Preferences. And on the Library tab, you will now be able to choose under library location, instead of just a local path on your computer or laptop or whatever, you'll be able to choose a cloud or shared storage location. So let's see if I can figure out how to do this. So if we jump over to Studio 4 here is my Snagit editor. And so I'm just going to go into Edit, Editor Preferences, and on the Library tab, I have my library location set to OneDrive for Business. So if you have a OneDrive Personal, Dropbox, Box.com, Dropbox Personal, Google Drive, iCloud, you just choose which service you want, and you will then be asked to log in to authenticate and choose the directory where you want your Snagit captures to be stored. And so once you do that, if you're on a local library, it will ask you if you want to replicate your local library up to the cloud to this shared drive. And I did that. It pushed 13 plus thousand Snagit captures up to my OneDrive. And then I did this same thing on my other computer or my laptop, and it synced all of those. I don't know that it pulls all of them down and keeps a full local copy of all of them, but I can see all of my captures from my desktop also on my laptop. Super simple, awesome feature. I've been wanting it, but wasn't quite on the top of my list like, oh, they should do this. So as soon as I saw this new feature, I turned it on. Great, great feature. Okay, so that was the shared library. Full image editor. This is kind of self-explanatory to me. As soon as you take a screenshot or a capture in Snagit, it can open the editor and you can edit it in the editor. And it's basically just image editing tools. So let's just show a few examples of that. Let's see, did I close a window? Sorry, one moment. Let me get rid of this. And let's go back to screen 4. So here, for instance, I was playing with this AI image creator called Dolly this morning. And so I asked for images of people drinking coffee in Berlin, Germany, since I'll be visiting there next week. Well, this is what it came up with. And people have said that this Dolly is this amazing thing, but with human images, I've had very mixed results. So I'm going to zoom in. And to do that, I'm going to use hold down the control key and use my mouse scroll wheel. So when I scroll up, it zooms in. When I scroll back, it zooms out. Okay. Now you can also do that with this zoom feature down here. So you can zoom in, zoom out, and you can do fit to screen, actual size. And so I'm just going to control zoom in, and I'm just going to use the image editor to point out some issues. So I'm going to click on more. I'm going to choose, actually it's right up here, arrow. I'm going to choose arrow, and I'm going to choose, let's say I want a new color that isn't listed here. I'm going to choose I have a bright blue under my colors. So let's say I want that. So I'm going to say, well, few strange things about this image. First is the coffee cup kind of bends in around his mouth and nose. The other one is his eye looks really strange. It's pointed in the wrong direction. It has a different color than this eye. It just doesn't sync up. Then this finger, like what's going on there? And then in general, this smearing of the mug. So I'm just drawing arrows, right? Now I can say, well, I want to use the stamp feature and say, hey, this image really needs first aid. So you can just drop these predefined stamp images here. I can cut stuff out. So if I want to remove this section of photo, I just highlight it and press the delete key and it's gone. I can then fill that in if I just want to pretend it didn't exist with white. And then maybe I want to make a note. And it's like, people say that DALL-E is great, but I am doubtful. So there's my caption. So you're able to do this. And let's say I want to edit this text. It's a little blurry because I am zoomed in, but let me make this text pink. And I want a green outline and a drop shadow to the bottom right corner. So there we go. And now I can zoom back out and you can do all sorts of edits. You can do markups, notes, captions, whatever you want. There's all sorts of, tools in order to edit your image. There is also, under image, you can go to effects and you can do more like photo manipulation. So for instance, on filters, maybe you want to change it to grayscale. You can do that. So kind of light Photoshop features, that's an option as well. So there I go. I've highlighted things. Grayscale kind of gets rid of what I want. Invert colors. I don't know why anyone would use that, but I'm just going to cancel here. And let's say that I wanted to apply a filter grayscale and I said apply. I said, oops, I really don't want to do that. Snagit Editor supports pretty much unlimited undos. So all the way through to when you captured the image, you can pretty much undo it. So I'm just going to do a Control Z and there we go. It reversed my grayscale. So fantastic feature. And I'm just doing Control Z. This computer is a little slow with the Snagit feature sometimes. Probably need to reboot. So here I am. I'm just doing Control Z and I can undo 50 different steps that I did. I can also do Control Y and I can redo a step. It's taking a while. It's thinking. There we go. So really, really handy image editor, super fast, super flexible. I no longer need Photoshop. I just do just about everything here. Okay. So that is the image editor. Resize image. So basically when you take a screen capture, and let's just show how that works, but when you take a screen capture, maybe you capture the full screen, maybe you capture a very large image on your monitor. Well, you don't want to necessarily email that massive image. So let's do a test here. So let's go to screen 4 and let's say that I want to capture my entire browser, this entire screenshot. So I'm going to press my print screen button and you see this full screen option. Oh, it's freezing. My apologize. I can't tell if it's coming through on the video, so I'm going to try it. We'll see what happens, but it freezes my video editor. So let me know if the streaming works. So I'm going to hit print screen. I'm going to go to the top, and for me, I see a full screen button. And now it has captured my entire monitor as full screen capture. Well, maybe that's too big. Maybe I don't need the details. I just need to communicate, hey, open your browser, navigate to this page, whatever I'm trying to convey in this screenshot. Well, this screenshot is 1922 by 1082. Not sure how those dimensions came about, but 1920 by 1080 and a 1 pixel border, I believe. But that's too big. It's having to decrease the zoom down to 55% in order to get this image to display. So that gives me a reference of how big this is. Well, if I want to email something smaller than what I see right now, let me change that to 50%. And so I just click on this percent, the zoom factor, excuse me, not zoom. I click on these dimensions to resize image and the units of percent, because I just want to decrease it. I'm going to go to 50% since I see that zoom was at 55. And there we go. It automatically scales, rescales, and resizes that image so that it is only 50% of the actual size. So now it is only 961 by 541 pixels. So not only is it physically smaller, but the file size or image size is going to be smaller. So if I open up Microsoft Word and bring that over here, I can click in Snagit, press Control-C to copy, or do Edit Copy. And then I can go over here in Word and I can paste. And now I don't have a massive image that I then have to scale down and resize. It's like, okay, cool. I've just pasted in a 961 pixel wide image into Word, and it's not going to take up tons of space anymore. So that's how you resize the image. This is how I do it. There are probably 4 ways to navigate and do this, but since this is right here, I just choose percent 90% of the time, 99% of the time. I just want to shrink it some arbitrary amount. And let me do a Control-Z. So here it's at 55% zoom. Well, let's make it a little smaller, 50, enter, boom. Now it's at 100% zoom, so I'm seeing the actual size of this image now. Very, very handy feature. Use it constantly. Okay, so after I resize an image, in order to save space, make it easier to email, let's talk about resizing a canvas. So for instance, let's see, what is a good one? Is this working? Screen 3, screen 4. Getting confused. Okay, so how do we resize a canvas? One thing I can do is I can take this screenshot of Business Central, and instead of making it down to 50, let me make it down to 30%. So it's pretty small. And let's say I want to put some text around this to convey a message. Hey, this is Business Central. Isn't it great? Something very basic. And so rather than have to figure out how to put stuff there and what size it's going to be, I can actually define that by choosing Image, Resize Canvas. Let's say I know I want to put text above it for a brochure or an image for a graphic or a website. So I'm going to say, well, I want the placement of this existing image to be bottom center because I want to expand upward, and I'm going to make my height 575. So it's more square. There we go. And you'll notice it extended the canvas. It didn't resize my image. It just expanded the canvas so I have room above the existing image. Now, I happen to have my settings such that I have no background color. It's transparent. That's why you see these gray and white squares. So I'm going to use fill. Maybe I don't want a white background. Maybe I want a gray background to offset that. Be whatever color you want. You can choose the eyedropper. Maybe you want to match the color palette. So you just do eyedropper, choose any color that's available, and there you go. And then I'll choose text. And now I can say, isn't Business Central the coolest SaaS ERP system on the block? Okay. And of course, I will want to change this. And let's make this 40 point. That's a little big, 34 point. There we go. I can resize this. And so The resize of the canvas gives you space to do other things. You can control whether it appears on top, around all four sides, on the bottom, whatever you need to do in order to make more space. Now, in the example that I talked about back over here, I was working with a logo. So for instance, let's say that I want this to be a logo or a background on my YouTube channel or Twitter profile or whatever. So I just Control Z all of that activity, and I'm going to make it even smaller. Let's say I'm going to make this 70%, just so you see it's kind of a thumbnail of Business Central. But I want to make this a Twitter or YouTube background. I'm going to resize canvas, and I know the kind of strange dimensions, let's pretend, that YouTube and Twitter want. So I'm going to make this 1000 wide by 800 high. And I'm going to say OK. And this looks bizarre, but what I want, it is what I need, because when you try to upload this, you will see these dotted lines in both Twitter and YouTube that define this boundary. So it looks something like that. It's like, oh, this is what's going to appear on your page. It's like, why? It's like they grab a banner, a horizontal strip as a banner. So that's why I have to resize this, because if I did it like this, they would say, oh, that's going to be your banner. Very, very strange. So I need to redo that. So resize canvas. Let's do 1000 by 800. And there we go. I'm going to fill with just white. Just going to go with white. There we go. And now I can do something like Steve's channel. Okay, and that would show up as the banner. So I don't use it often, but when websites need bizarre image dimensions and I don't want to make the image larger or smaller, Canvas is kind of the cheat code to make that happen. Okay, so you see that this was my large logo, this was the small logo, but neither of those worked. I had to create white space at the top and bottom and left and right in order to accommodate YouTube and Twitter taking that slice out of the middle of the image in order to make this happen. So that's why I've used it. That's where I've used it several times. Okay, rearranging an image. And so this is an example of, say, Business Central. You have this horizontal scrolling situation, and you need to fit this in an email to send to someone. Because if you paste that really wide scroll grid in an email, they're going to have to scroll, or maybe it'll shrink and it won't appear. So let's just give that a try. Okay, so here I'm going to go into a, let's see, was that a sales order? I don't know. Let's try sales orders. Okay, so I'm going to go to sales order 101001. Okay, there we go. Here are my lines. And you'll notice I have a scroll bar here. So I can scroll back and forth, but it's kind of a hassle. So I'm going to show two tricks on this one, and hopefully it comes through and doesn't freeze, because it freezes everything else when I take this capture on my end. So let me scoot this out of the way, and I'm going to find the Snagit capture tool. Where is it? Okay, so previously I was using this. This is the, oops, gosh. Okay, this is the Snagit editor app. And this is only once you've taken a capture, you edit in here. So let me move that out of the way, and let me show you the Snagit capture app. And so this capture app is a little red S icon in your system tray or in the start menu. So what I'm going to do is, since I know I want to take a horizontal capture of this scrolling area, I'm going to make it full screen. I'm going to come over here, and I want to do what's called a panoramic. So scrolling window is for vertical scrolling. Let's say you have an entire web page and you want to capture that vertical scrolling web page in one capture. You would do scrolling window. Panorama is horizontal, I believe. And then there's one that can do both horizontal and vertical scrolling all in one, which I don't even remember how I did that. But I'm going to choose panoramic here. I'm going to have my normal border. And so there we go. So let's see if I can get this to work. So I'm going to click capture, and then I'm going to highlight the grid that I want. In this case, my scrolling window. And now I'm going to click on the start button, and I'm going to scroll across, and it's capturing that scroll. Now I'm going to click stop. So it is able to capture the movement and take a picture of that. Super cool feature. It can be really difficult or tedious to capture this in one shot otherwise. You can resize, but it's a mess. Now that's great, that's clever that I got this panorama, but this thing is way too wide to share. It's not very helpful. So if I want all of these columns, I can grab the selection tool, and here's my middle point. I'm going to slice it right after line discount. And I just highlight this section. I use my mouse, and you'll see 4 arrows there. And I'm just going to drag that down below. And as soon as I let go, it resizes the canvas for me. It says, oh, you move this down here. I'm going to make the canvas taller. I'm going to resize the canvas myself and shrink it down like that. So now, rather than the super wide panoramic screenshot, I've cut it in half and made it more vertical. You can still see both. I can still move this around. And there we go. Now notice I can't resize this top portion, the original capture, but I can move this section and I can resize this section. So that may be important depending on what you're trying to do. But for now, I'm able to do this, and I've noticed that some weird things happen if I leave this transparent, graphical artifacts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a gray color, and I'm just going to fill that in. So now I can do a Control-C, go back to my Word document, and Control-V, and I paste that in. So if I'm sharing this with a colleague, putting in a documentation email, it's more compact in a document. If I didn't do that, let's undo this. Okay, I could just Control-C this entire thing, but look at that. You really have to zoom in to see that, and that's just a hassle. If it's in a PDF, it's virtually unreadable. So I prefer to split the image or do some type of modification to make it readable. And let me get my presentation back. Come on. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. This is a way of rearranging the image so that it's resized relative or in the context of what you're trying to do. Instead of super wide, you can make it more vertical. Or if something is very vertical, you can place 2 columns side by side. All you need to do is use the selection tool, grab the section of your image you want, and move it. Okay. So recompose image is the similar concept, but it's just a little fancier. And in this example, I commonly like to do this with, say, Business Central, where there are lots of white space or gaps. I do this all the time. So let's go back to Business Central, and I'm going to show, let's see, what was this? This was sales invoices. There we go. So this is the sales invoice list page. So there's a lot of blank space here. I can size it down, but you'll notice I lose some columns. I have due date here, but maybe I want to include amount. So it's like, yeah, you could kind of try to resize this, but you need to come out here. So that's amount. Okay, but I still have these extra columns. Let's say I don't want to change the column layout. So I'm going to press print screen. I'm going to capture this. Actually, let me make it bigger. Let me take a bigger screenshot so you can see a little more recompose operations. Okay, so there we go. So I'm basically capturing most of the web page. I've got my header, got the blank on each side, and I've got my columns. Well, first up, I want to get rid of these blank columns. They external document number, location code, assigned user ID, they're not being used, right? So how do I do that? I go up to my selection tool from the More menu, and I'm going to highlight the column that I want. I'm just going to use my arrow key. You can use the mouse, but if you want to keep everything lined up, I'm just going to use my right arrow key. I'm going to bring it in as, as tight as I can reasonably. Then I just click away. Now, if I try to do this again, something weird happens. It grabs a new layer. So I don't want to do that quite yet. For some reason, Snagit requires me to flatten the image. So right now, I have this as a separate layer. It's the selection that got pulled as a new layer. So I'm able to move it. If I do Control-Shift-T, or it's flatten or flatten all. I just do Control-Shift-T so it flattens all layers. So let me just do that, Control-Shift-T, and you'll notice my layer disappeared. Now I can grab these columns and I can use the right arrow and then Control-Shift-T to flatten. And this is a little tedious, but it's kind of cool. It's really powerful in that you can completely edit an image in order to really make it much more compact. So now my grid is looking good, but what if I want to include these things as well? Well, I can do the same thing. I can slide this over and Control-Shift-T. I can even do this. I can bring this in to make it look like it was actually sized this big. And let me bring this in to make it look nice and consistent. And now I'm just going to resize my canvas to bring this down, bring this over. And like that, I took, where is it? I took this web page and made it much more compact. And when I'm doing documentation, this is what I want to include in my documentation. I don't need all that white space or wasted border or empty columns that don't communicate anything to the user. I want to convey specific information, and this is much more visually compact when you're pasting into some other document. So now I can do a Control-C, go over to my Word document, and paste that in, and you see that the text is large, you can read the text, it's full width, and it really conveys information. And even if I want to shrink this down, I can do that and it's still very readable. So that's one feature I use constantly. And for lack of a better name, I call that recomposing an image. So we take that wide image and we shrink it down to that. So super easy. It does take a couple seconds to do that, but it's not hard. It's just select, drag, or arrow key, and you resize the canvas when you're done. Okay, multiple capture presets. I don't use this a ton, but if I go back to the Snagit capture tool, you'll see if I click on my presets on the bottom here, it expands. Oops, sorry. Screen 4. Okay, if I click here, I have the capture tool. Let me just minimize this. If I click on the presets in the bottom right corner, you'll see I have several presets. And you can click on these and it loads those preset settings into the editor, or excuse me, the capture settings here. So you see I have region, scale, image, border. If I click on my normal one, Image Shadow Editor, it gets rid of the scaling effect. And then I have a panoramic scrolling capture, a grab text, and then a 60 and 70%. So I can have these predefined. Now, my normal one captures at 100%. If I capture this screen, it'll capture it at actual size. But I mentioned that sometimes when I take a class, let's say this is the Zoom meeting or Teams meeting where I'm viewing, and it's a large presentation. I don't need to have that full size. So what I can do is I can choose the scale 60%, which is Control-Shift Print Screen. So I'm going to try that now. Control Shift print screen. I'm going to grab my capture of my Business Central window. And you'll notice it is already scaled down. Oops. Let's try that again. So if I do this, this is the 100% capture. So I'm not having to resize the image after capture. When I'm in the middle of the class and just wanting to take quick screenshots, this saves me a step. And you can have as many steps as you want on your capture preset. So in this case, it went down to, what was it, 60%? So that saves me time when I'm wanting to paste this screenshot into my notes. And you can have, if I click here, it'll load that preset. You can have multiple effects defined. So I have scale image and I have border. And so I click on that gear and that defines what the scale image setting is. Now I can say add another effect. So maybe in addition to scale image and border, I want to have a shadow. So when I click on shadow, it's going to be a drop shadow to the bottom right. Maybe I want to add another effect and I want to watermark my image, and I can choose what my watermark is. So you can do all sorts of things, multiple effects in one capture automatically. So you take your capture, all of these effects are applied instantaneously. You're not having to do the 10 steps after the capture manually. So very handy feature if you can think of use cases for that. Okay. So what's next? Oh, multiple capture presets, and I also just covered auto capture effects. So you can automatically apply effects after your screenshot. So this is the grab text feature. I don't use this a ton, but I can go to a screenshot. Let me just close my capture tool, bring back my editor, and let's say I want to grab the text from this. Doesn't have to be this large, but I right-click in the center of my screenshot, grab text. It automatically applies an OCR, and there you go. So sometimes it's a little rough, but there you go. So I can highlight this text, or I can copy all, and it automatically OCRs that for me. Let's say that I have this. This is a little more reasonable text. I'm going to grab text. And I want to send this to a friend. Hey, check out the price of this very expensive wireless access point. I can copy this. And now if I go over to Word here, I can go down here and paste that in. So very simple way of grabbing certain pieces of text off of an image. And I have customers send me an image and it'll have some really long item number or customer ID or transaction ID. I'll frequently use this from the image that they emailed me so I can say, hey, open up this customer, open up this item, take a look at this, rather than me trying to retype their 20-character item number. So it comes in handy for that. Okay. Where are we? So that's what I use it for. Serial numbers are very handy for this. Okay, in addition to taking actual screenshots, static screenshots, you can capture videos. And so here, this is an example of an instructional video that I sent to a customer. Rather than call them or try and type out all these steps, this allowed me to capture a 2-minute video that had all these instructions. I don't know if this is going to work during a live stream, so if I kick myself off, hope this was enjoyable for you. Okay, so I'm going to find my Snagit capture tool in my system tray, and there we go. So this is an image capture. Not even sure what all-in-one is, but let's see. Quickly capture an image or video on the fly. I personally don't use this feature. There are probably 100 features I don't use or have never used. I normally capture an image. Oops, sorry. There we go. Okay, so this is the Snagit capture tool, and I was saying there are 3 options here. I don't use all-in-one, don't even know what it is. Image, that's my static image capture. Video, I tend to do this just manually. I'll open this, click video, and I can choose region or an entire window. Usually choose region just to keep the video small, and then share. You can automatically have it share, but maybe I want to send it to editor. I could optionally record a webcam if I had one hooked up, but in this case I don't want to, similar to Camtasia, I suppose. I do want to preview an editor, capture the cursor, record microphone. I'm going to turn that off just so it doesn't freak out during my live stream. Okay, so let's see what happens. I'm going to record video, and let me get my screen handy here, and let's see if this works during a live stream. Capture, and I'm going to draw what I want. Is that working? It says initializing. I think I may have broken things. Okay, well, an audio error occurred. Okay, it gave me an audio error even though I didn't want to record audio. So because I'm doing a live stream, it kind of freaked out on me. So I'm not going to do that, but basically you just capture a region. It gives you a countdown, 3, 2, 1, go. It starts recording video, and you can talk in your microphone and record the screen, and then you click stop when you're done, and then you send someone your video. Works very well for a quick clip, for training, for giving instructions to customers or colleagues. So very nice feature. And with that, I hope that was helpful in showing how to actually do the things, the tips and tricks that I use in Snagit. So anyway, happy Friday. Have a good weekend. Cheers.